is California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. I'm glad you're with us. Our guest today is Dave Jones. He is the Insurance Commissioner for the state of California. Later on in the program, we'll be joined by Conway. She is the GOP leader in the California State Assembly. Commissioner Jones, thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Great to be with you, Brad.
Yeah, and I want to speak about health care reform during our discussion. And I want to speak from the point of view that we don't know what's going to happen with federal health care reform. Okay, as of today, we don't know what's going to happen. But what we do know is California already has implemented certain provisions of healthcare reform that, regardless of what happens with federal healthcare reform, will be in place. Am I right?
You're right. We have and we are moving forward with implementation. Things like requiring the health insurers to put more of our money into actual medical care. Things like banning them from denying children health insurance because of pre-existing conditions. Things like banning lifetime caps that you hit at some point when you have a really expensive disease or illness. Things like maternity benefits. We now require that as a matter of California law.
What about adult pre-existing conditions?
That will go into effect in 2014 under the federal law. It's not currently a part of our state law.
But for argument's sake, if the federal law goes away, for whatever reason, we don't know, would California, or are you proposing that the pre-existing condition elimination be eliminated?
California could move forward with its own version of the Affordable Care Act. In fact, in 2005, there was a bipartisan bill supported by then Governor Schwarzenegger and the Assembly Speaker Fabian Nunez to do exactly that. That bill didn't pass in the California legislature, but we did a lot of work on it, and legally, we could do our own Affordable Care Act.
What about the exchanges? Because that seems to be the crux of federal health care reform, that small businesses can, or individuals can contract to get health insurance through a group, we'll call it a co-op or an exchange, so they have bargaining power. As I understand it, California has exchanges regardless of what happens federally.
Yes, we are setting up a California exchange, and you're exactly correct. The idea is to accumulate the buying power of all these individuals that are out there trying to buy health insurance and HMO product by themselves, and the buying power of small businesses that are in a bad bargaining position with the health insurers because they're out there by themselves, and aggregate that buying power and then function as a large group to get better prices for those people inside the exchange. So we're moving forward with setting up an exchange, and the exchange is in California law now, and we could, even if the federal law is struck down, move forward with our exchange. Here's the big problem, though. If the federal law is struck down, we lose federal subsidies that go to subsidize the product in exchange for lower income working people, and we're broke at the state. We don't have the ability to do that subsidy ourselves.
So what would happen?
What would happen is we'd have to go without the subsidy. But there is a solution, and it's something I've been working on the last 7 years as a member of the state legislature and now as insurance commissioner, and that is reining in the excessive rate hikes by giving that authority to the state's insurance commissioner to reject excessive rate hikes.
Let's talk about that. Yeah, but here's our smooth transition to the next topic. And that literally is the authority of the insurance commissioner. We know under Prop 103, which was passed in 1988, is that right? Correct. The insurance commissioner, the office was created, but most of the power of the insurance commissioner pursuant to that proposition focused on auto, fire, life. It didn't really focus as much on health. Am I right, sir?
Yes, in 1988, the voters gave the Insurance Commissioner of California the authority to regulate the rates of auto insurance, homeowners insurance, and all other business lines of insurance. And so insurance commissioners have used that authority to save businesses and consumers tens of billions of dollars for all those product lines. But that voter-enacted law, Proposition 103, did not include health insurance and HMOs. So I've been fighting for the last 7 years as a member of the legislature and now as insurance commissioner to change that law through the legislature to give the insurance commissioner that authority, that same authority that the insurance commissioner has for all those other insurance product lines, add health insurance and HMO. And this is not a radical idea. There are over 34 other states that have given this authority to their insurance commissioner. It's worked well in those states. And as I say, it's worked well for all the other insurance product lines. It's high time we did it for health insurance.
There's no doubt that the insurance industry will come out with guns a-blazing if this initiative makes it to the ballot, which it looks like it will. Come November. I understand signatures have been collected and there should be enough to qualify.
Yes, we've submitted 800,000 signatures of Californians.
So let's talk about the process to talk to voters about the benefits of this initiative as you see it. In 1988, I understand that the insurance industry spent $120 million to defeat Prop 103. The proponents spent $3 million. Still passed.
There's no question that the health insurers and the HMOs, who are enjoying record profits at our expense, are going to fight this tooth and nail. They don't want anybody in the state being able to look over the shoulder and say enough is enough. But enough is enough. When they're making profits of 20 or 30%, as is the case for these health insurers, at a time when we're still in the worst recession since the Great Depression, enough is enough. 7 million Californians cannot afford health insurance. They endure double-digit rate increases, 152% on average since 2003. Some people 300, 400, 500% rate increases. Explains why businesses can't afford it, why individuals and families can't afford it. It's time we did something about it.
I want to broaden out the discussion though and talk about regulation generally, because when you look at California, nonpartisan surveys I think would suggest that as you look at our taxing environment, it's pretty much middling. We come in somewhere 19, 20, 21 in terms of how we tax our businesses. It's on regulation where the state of California really gets hammered for having an unwieldy and overregulated environment. Many magazines, many nonpartisan economists have said we just are overregulating. And if you look at this proposed legislation, arguably it adds more layers of regulation. So how do you combat that concern that we are just yet again adding more regulations to an already overregulated state?
This is a pro-consumer and pro-business regulation. Remember, consumers, their families, and businesses are at the risk of these ever-increasing health insurance rates. They don't have the bargaining power to fight against the health insurers and the HMOs. This levels the playing field and says, look, we're going to allow the regulator to look at these rates and see if they're fair and reasonable. And we already do it for all of the other insurance lines. It's not resulted in those insurance companies not writing insurance in those areas. All that insurance is still being provided, but it's saved consumers a lot of money. And when you have a situation where essentially the health insurers and the HMOs have a monopoly, then it's time and appropriate for government to intervene and say, enough is enough. We need to level the playing field because consumers and businesses don't have a fighting chance.
So where are the business groups on this initiative? I mean, I think about the Small Business Union or whatever it may be called. I can't remember the name. I mean, are they supportive of it? The National Small Business Federation?
On the legislation, we do have support from the small business majority. Many small business owners and operators support, as well as a huge number of consumer organizations. Sadly, the Chamber of Commerce is defending the big insurers at the expense of their own small and medium business size.
What about the medical associations?
So here's what's really ironic. I have the authority to reject excessive medical malpractice insurance rates, and I've already done that and delivered $23 million in savings to physicians and dentists and other medical providers. And yet the California Medical Association is okay with that, but not okay with my having that authority to help ordinary consumers, to help the people that live down the street from you and I who are dealing with these excessive rate hikes. I think that's inconsistent, and we need this reform.
I want to talk about the power of the consumer. And you talk about how consumers don't have the power vis-a-vis insurance companies. I also want to get a sense about the power of the consumer to comparison shop when they need medical services. I mean, if I need to get my gallbladder out, for example, I would have no idea how to compare hospitals. You know, I got to think their rates are different. And as I understand it, part of the problem is the information is not given to the consumer.
There's no question that there's a complete lack of transparency as it relates to costs. Now, the Federal Affordable Care Act gets at that in one way by requiring the health insurers and the HMOs to standardize all their products so you can do apples-to-apples comparisons on their products. But behind those products is where it really gets interesting. What are the cost differentials between physicians and hospitals in the same market? You can't get that information currently. I think that needs to be changed too. You should be able, as a consumer, to be able to compare and figure out what physician you want to go to and at what cost. It's also hard to get quality information, although that's getting a little bit better, but there's virtually no cost information right now.
But do we need legislation on this very issue? I know Senator Lieu, for example, is looking at legislation to require that all charges be divulged prior to the process. The burden should be placed upon the hospital, not the patient. What's your sense of this very question?
I think we do need legislation to promote this transparency because there are things like gag clauses that exist between the hospitals and the insurers that prevent either party from releasing information about the underlying costs. So as long as those sorts of things get in the way, yes, you need legislation to change it to make sure that these prices are transparent. It's even a bigger problem right now is more and more people are forced to endure high deductible policies with high co-payments and high co-insurance. You really need to know how much it's costing for you to go to a particular physician, because you're going to have to pay that out of pocket given the nature of these policies. But you can't get that information currently.
Let's shift gears and talk about auto insurance. It is required by law that every Californian have auto insurance, and you have authority over the rates that we pay in terms of auto. What can you tell us in terms of the status of the cost for auto insurance for Californians?
Just in the last year and several months that I've been insurance commissioner, we've delivered $438 million in savings to consumers of auto insurance and homeowners insurance using this authority that I have to reject excessive rate hikes. And so there's no question that that authority has helped to reduce the rate of increase for auto insurance in California over time, and homeowners insurance. Now, for those people that can't find an affordable product in the market, we have something called the California Low-Cost Auto Insurance Program, which is a skinnier auto insurance. It still meets the mandate, though, and we would encourage people to go to mylowcostauto.com to learn about it. You have to be income eligible. For a family of 4, you can make no more than about $56,000. It's not for your really expensive car. You have to have a car that's worth less than about $22,000, but it's an affordable auto insurance product for those that can't find a product on the private market.
I have to ask you about earthquake coverage. I know that after the '94 earthquake coverage just soared, and it really became prohibitive for many of us. And I understand that California has attempted to create a pool for earthquake coverage. Where are we on that issue?
We have a California Earthquake Authority that offers a residential earthquake insurance product that's underwritten by participating homeowners insurers. It provides an important product, but it's not cheap. I encourage people to get it because when a large earthquake occurs, if you're in an area subject to earthquakes, there's going to be a huge disaster, and a lot of people are going to be left out in terms of recovery. So I encourage people to purchase it. One of the things we're trying to do to make it more affordable.
But that's the problem. It's really expensive.
What we're doing to make it more affordable, we just ordered a 9% average rate decrease in the product just the other month. But in addition, we're now requiring that there be a personal property coverage that you can get to before you have to go to the big deductible to get recovery for your home, so that if there's a minor earthquake and it knocks down your china cabin or your chandelier falls, you can get to $2,500 of coverage for that before you have to get through the deductible. We think that'll make it more attractive too.
Commissioner, in our final moments, I want you to explain for us, if we are having a problem with an insurance company, medical, auto, whatever it is, what can we do? As I told you, my wife has a chronic illness, and we have had some real challenges with our insurance company. I was able to turn to your office for assistance. A lot of people don't know how to do that.
We have a website. If you go to insurance.ca.gov, if you go to our hotline, 1-800-427-HELP, you can get a consumer services officer on the line who will help you with your dispute with the insurance company. If we discover the insurance company is violating the law, I have the authority to take them to court essentially and force them to do the right thing. So we do have all these services, and we want to encourage business owners as well as consumers to contact us if they're having a disagreement with their insurance company.
But are you able to intervene? I have to think in a state of 37 million people, the number of calls can be great. They may be higher after this interview. What's your sense?
I hope they are. We do intervene, and we're very successful at it. And so we encourage people to contact us to see if we can help.
Okay. His name is Dave Jones. He is the insurance commissioner for the state of California. When we come back, we'll be speaking with Connie Conway. Connie Conway is the GOP Assembly leader. We'll be speaking with her about the California budget crisis, as well as Governor Brown's initiative to increase sales tax and to increase income taxes on the wealthiest among us. Dave Jones, we thank you for joining us. My name is Brad Pomerance. We'll be right back on California Edition.
At the peak of California's budget crisis in 2009, how large was California's budget deficit? 25, 42, 45, or $52 billion? California's budget deficit peaked at $42 billion in 2009.
Welcome back to California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. She is back. Connie Conway. She is the GOP leader in the California State Assembly. Thank you, Madam Leader, for joining us. We appreciate it.
Or should I say I'm back?
You are back, and so is the budget deficit.
Oh, that's
in a
always back.
very significant way. So we heard the deficit had been $9.2 billion. It's now up to $16 billion, according to Governor Brown. The legislative analyst thinks it could be $17 billion. Talk to us about what you're seeing, Madam Leader.
Oh, you know, the hits just keep on coming. We had such an opportunity to not have this deficit, and actually this budget, without getting too far down in the weeds, is more than it was last year when you dig through everything.
But I do want to get down to the weeds on this issue. And
do
the
dig
issue
through that.
is spending.
Yes.
Because many of your colleagues have talked about California having a spending problem. And I was never really clear what that meant, but Governor Brown's own office said in the May revise that California spent $2.1 billion more than it was supposed to spend.
Right.
That's a lot of money, and that really goes to the question. I mean, I do believe we have a revenue problem. We'll talk about that momentarily.
Sure.
But there's a spending issue here.
Definitely.
Talk to me about that, Leader.
A quick, you know, one example of this is, well, we're spending more year after year and holding bigger deficits. But when my caucus refused to extend the temporary taxes, sales tax went up. California collected about $7.5 billion more than they thought they would, but they spent it. So this is the problem.
So
you collect
right.
it, and we shouldn't have a deficit if we hadn't gone back, reversed some cuts, and spent money that we got. We wouldn't have the deficit we have now.
Here's the challenge, though, on the issue of the tax extension. If the extension had gone forward, California would have $12 billion that it doesn't have now. That would have been better for the deficit. But, talk to me.
But no, it actually it did the same thing when we didn't extend the taxes. So yeah, the tax revenue went
Down.
exactly. But no, people spent more. So I'm telling you, the sales tax revenue, after we cut those taxes off, went up $7.5 billion.
So back to spending. If we spent $2.1 billion more than we were supposed to, from where and how can we get control of that? Or do we even know?
Well, there's that. I think even if you look at the new taxes that he's proposing
We'll talk
that
about
are for public safety and education, schools are still going to lose even if the taxes pass. The investment in California has been in social welfare programs, and that's where the money is going.
So let's talk about social welfare, because, look, we're Americans, we're Californians, we love thy neighbor. But the challenge becomes we don't have enough money for thy neighbor. And even Governor Brown, a Democrat, is calling for dramatic cuts to social welfare programs. At what point, though, are we cutting so much that our neighbor is suffering?
You know, as human beings, as Californians, that we are not out to punish people. But there are efficiencies that we really need to look at. You know, since I'm a grandmother, I always say, no one wants grandma left out in the middle of the road in her wheelchair with no help. That's just not how we function. At the same time, we don't want to pay her great niece to take care of her when that is not happening.
You know, I 100% believe you that we need to look at efficiencies. I think everyone does. But year after year I hear that and I'm wondering, okay, let's look at them and let's put them into place. What's the problem on that issue? Is it the majority party? Is it the executive branch? Is it regulations? Is it the minority party?
I believe that the majority party has interest groups that prevail upon them to not make these cuts. The reality in California is we have 12% of the population of the United States, and we have 33% of the population of the United States receiving special benefits are in California. That the math doesn't work there.
I want to talk about taxes. I'm a taxpayer who wants their taxes raised. You know, that's a no-brainer. That being said, economists left, right, and center do advocate for balanced approaches.
Right.
And your party for the last few years has been very firm that you will not support any increase in taxes. Every member of your caucus has signed a no new tax pledge. Now we're seeing, though, some Republican candidates, viable Republican candidates for the state legislature, refusing to sign these pledges. And I'm wondering if it's time, Leader, to really look at the tax question for the Republican Party, because what's happened so often is the party is taken out of the equation. Mm-hmm. Because if you refuse to even consider taxes, there's nowhere to negotiate.
Refusing to consider taxes, whether people sign a pledge or not, those candidates, those folks have told me, you know, I'm personally opposed to this until we tell the people the truth. You know, every household, every business has had to prioritize their spending. The state of California has not done that. Until we do that, it's disingenuous to ask the people to pay more taxes until we tell them the truth about what their taxes pay for and where it goes.
Isn't your sense that Governor Brown is really doing his best to be transparent more than prior administrations? I could be wrong, but he seems to be kind of a tell it as it is guy.
Well, he believes that he's telling it like it is, but billing these taxes is one example. Saying that's for schools, that absolutely is not where it goes. And for me, it's a basic philosophical difference, and I've had this conversation with the governor. If California really needs more money, some of us would rather do a better job of using what we have. But let's say it needs more revenue. The basic philosophical difference is my friends across the aisle and the governor want those that are paying taxes to pay more. 48% of the people in California don't pay taxes. So he wants the people that are paying taxes to pay more. We want to create more taxpayers. We say, you get the revenue, put people to work. People just want to go to work and take care of their family.
Here's the irony. There are 2 tax initiatives on the ballot this fall. One by the governor, which focuses on a sales tax by ½ cent, taxing the wealthiest for 7 years. There's another one by Molly Munger, which is seen as more left. That taxes everyone.
Yes.
So could one argue that's more Republican, more egalitarian, or
maybe libertarian.
Maybe libertarian, well stated, right?
I'm not sure. There'll be at least 3. I know tax initiatives on the ballot, and the reality of it is, if the governor's tax initiative, which is the blended initiative with the Teachers Association, that will put California income tax. We're already the highest, and business leaves and all of that. That will make personal income tax in California 21% higher than the next closest state. That's a tremendous amount of money.
Here's the challenge. The UC and CSU system is really suffering. Why it's suffering, is it we're not prioritizing them high enough? I don't know. But what I do know, and I have a niece who's going to be applying to college, so I admit I'm biased, but the Cal State system has said they are going to waitlist everyone who applies this fall until they know if the tax initiative passes. If it doesn't pass, they're going to cut enrollment dramatically.
This has become a real, obvious an issue, and I feel for you with the niece. My niece also, my sister's considering getting another job,
right,
in addition to the job she has.
But they might not even get in. Forget even.
Exactly. Our budget roadmap, we are protecting education in those cuts. We believe that there are ways to, in the budget, still make cuts, but protect education. That has been our budget roadmap pathway that we're looking at. We believe that education is so important. It's a priority of the people. We don't want to see our education system decimated.
I have to ask you about 2 potential boons to the state of California. One is called Facebook, the Facebook IPO, which didn't go as well as we had hoped, and the other is Amazon. We're going to start getting sales tax from Amazon. Can those 2 help the budget deficit much, or is that already factored in?
Oh, it's amazing to me how many people have claimed the revenue from those issues and where it should be spent and where it will be. As with everything in Sacramento, it's the interests line up, and we want our piece of the pie. On the Amazon thing, the part that I'm familiar with it is, though, that they are going to have physical plants in places, and there's some kind of deal has been made. I'm not sure how much money that the state of California will actually get from that. Maybe the local folks will get the tax, and then great, because we've just robbed local government of any opportunity to be self-sufficient. Yeah.
I want to talk about political strategy, if I may. I think I said this to you when we spoke recently. The Republican Party, in my humble opinion, triangulated the legislative Democrats quite well on the question of pensions. You presented a 12-point plan for pension reform that was word for word the Democratic governors. You didn't change a dot, a line, a comma, nothing. Can you do the same on the budget? Think about it. Governor Schwarzenegger worked with Democrats. He was a Republican. President Clinton worked with Newt Gingrich, Democrat, Republican. Why doesn't Connie, Conway, and Bob Huff work with the governor if the legislative Democrats won't? Because they're not.
We are always available to that, and actually, I love having conversation with the governor. I would love to speak to with him about this. That's we believe that, and that's why we put his pension plan into legislative form. Well, since then, not a word has been spoken.
And I have to ask you about that.
Oh, go through the May Revise. Google search it. You know how
Nothing.
many times the word pension is mentioned in the budget?
How many?
That would be none.
Why not? I guess, and educate us on the process. You have submitted the governor's plan. Because you're the minority party, you can't force a vote on it.
That's right.
It's that basic.
It is
It's
sitting
that
there.
simple.
It's ready. It's waiting. It has not received permission to have a committee hearing. It is, it's not been brought to the
Here's
floor.
What's interesting. I know. I've spoken with many Democrats who've said we need pension reform.
Oh yeah.
Can't you pluck a few off to get it through committee?
It's an election year. People say whatever it is they need to say to make the moment expedient, if you will. But that is a basic tenet. The governor doesn't want it to happen.
Really? Then why did he put together a 12-point plan? I
Well,
know you're not him, but
yeah. Well, I mean, it was good at the time, and I shouldn't say that he doesn't want it to happen. I'm sure the governor wants pension reform. It's not going to happen in this election cycle. It can't be on. He needs the support of labor and those that would be affected by a pension reduction plan. So no one wants to touch that until after the November election.
what about after the November election?
Well, if I've learned anything in my old age, procrastination never makes it better, and California has procrastinated on so many issues of importance. We can't continue to let this conversation about pension go. A wise man told me one time, Connie, 50% of something is something, 100% of nothing is nothing. And if we don't do something about it, we're off the cliff, and then there won't be anything to fight about because there won't be anything left.
And here's the challenge, is that nonpartisan, bipartisan analysts have said that California pension system is dangerously unsustainable. It's not a Democratic issue, it's not a Republican issue, it's a California issue.
So true.
And so the governor's words are clear, but you believe electoral politics gets in the way.
As politics does with everything in Sacramento, there's policy conversation and then there's political conversation. In an election year,
But you're no nonsense. The governor seems to be no nonsense.
we're ready. As I say, that's what we did. The governor put a plan out. We put it into legislative form. Let's do
Do you
this.
get to speak with him often?
Yeah, often enough.
Sort of? More than Schwarzenegger?
No.
Really?
I talked to him quite a bit at first, and he's been real busy, and we haven't had as many conversations as we used to. But I'd love to. I mean, my door is always open. I want to talk to him and say, where are we going with this, Governor? What are you doing, and what are you doing about your party to get them to support your ideas?
How about regulation? Again, the governor has said there are too many damn regulations. And when you look at the California environment, I think it's fair to say that there's uniform belief that we have too many regulations. Taxes is another question. We may be in the middle in terms of taxing businesses, but on regulation, the governor, too many damn regulations.
So many regulations. I mean, I think that in some instances, I'm not sure anybody actually knows what they all are, or nor do they understand what they do. But we know the effect of them, and that is driving businesses and jobs out of California. We have CEQA laws and rules. We have
You did get CEQA reform,
initiatives
though.
that have been for a couple of projects. And let's see, and we also got a CEQA exemption for some bike path
Connie
striping.
Conway, you are the GOP leader in the California State Assembly. Thank you for joining us. We
Happy to
appreciate
do
it.
it.
You
Thank
bet.
you.
I'm Brad Pomerance. Thanks for watching California Edition.